For those of us who dance, I shouldn't say us because I don't dance, but for those who dance, there's many dances that we can perform, ballroom dancing, all, more modern types of dancing that wouldn't be welcome maybe in church, but dancing, it's an expression of joy, and whether or not we in fact dance, there is a dance that's common to all of us as Minnesotans, and we might call it the standing in the foyer of someone's house determining whether or not to keep my shoes on dance. And we all know what this is, and because especially as Minnesotans, we have that sort of weird, quirky sense of hospitality. Do we keep our shoes on? Do we take them off? As hosts, do we have our guests keep them on, even though we don't really want them to keep them on? Oh, you can take them off, but you're kind of saying inside, keep them on. They're full of dirt and snow and mud. But anyway, there's this sort of complicated social ritual. And when we're standing in the foyer of someone's house, we'd be bending down and messing with the laces. So the determining whether or not to keep our shoes on, how complex and how confusing sometimes is hospitality. How to be hospitable. If you've been paying attention, you know that in the church, we're about to embark upon something very unique and special, and not just in the life of our parish or in the archdiocese, but indeed the whole universal Catholic Church throughout the world. And of course, I'm referring to the extraordinary Jubilee Year of Mercy that our Holy Father, Pope Francis, has called for this year, and it actually begins this Tuesday on the Solemnity of the Immaculate Conception of Our Lady. Holy Day of Obligation. A holy day of obligation. I'll see you Tuesday. So, this great, extraordinary year of Jubilee will extend until the conclusion of this liturgical year on the Feast of Christ the King next November. So what is the Holy Father doing? Well, I think in some sense, he is trying to get us to refocus our attention on the mercy of God, which we might say is the hospitality of God. God's hospitality for us. God's gracious and generous hospitality for us. We heard in that beautiful opening prayer of the Mass, to gain admittance to his company, to gain admittance to the company of the Lord. And we know what that's like, especially in these days. We're probably going to certain Christmas gatherings, different places where people are coming together. It's just a natural thing that happens this time of year. And do we keep our shoes on or not? As hosts, do we have our guests keep their shoes on or not? And it's worth exploring that a little bit. The Lord's mercy, and our Holy Father's purpose in giving us this year is to focus our attention on it. How generous is God's mercy? How gracious, how extravagant even is God's mercy that he pours out upon us in so many ways, through the church, through the sacraments, through works of mercy, reacquainting us with those familiar corporal and spiritual works of mercy that we remember from catechism and hopefully our children are learning. There's all sorts of ways in which we can make ourselves ready for that mercy, and we have to be careful at the same time. So there's this special year, it's gaining attention in the media. What's the Holy Father doing? We need to be careful not to sort of fall into that narrative that says, well, for 2,000 years, the church hasn't bothered with mercy. It's not the case that the church has just sort of now discovered mercy and is going to show it to the world through this special year. No, mercy is one of the basic truths of our faith. It's one of the basic things we know about God, that God is merciful, God is generous. So what the Holy Father is doing is he's trying to reacquaint the world with that. And don't we need it, brothers and sisters? Don't we need it? We look at the world, we look at what's happened in France, in California, even in our own community in the last few days, losing 2 young men in such a terrible and tragic way. We need to know that mercy of God. And so what the Holy Father has done is to take this extraordinary step. Extraordinary not in the sense that there's going to be fireworks and big dramatic things, but extraordinary in the sense that it's out of the ordinary. It's outside of the ordinary. You may remember the last time we had a Jubilee year was in the year 2000, when Pope St. John Paul II called a Jubilee to initiate the third millennium of Christianity. And the Jubilee year tradition is something that is very, very ancient. It goes all the way back to the Old Testament, to our Jewish brothers and sisters, I should say ancestors, not brothers and sisters, ancestors in the faith would have a Jubilee every so many years, and a natural one fell on that turn of the millennium in 2000. Now, it's only been 15 years since that one. So what is the Holy Father doing? He's taking an extraordinary step. This is an extraordinary Jubilee. There will be many special graces available, many indulgences encouraged to be practiced in this year. The Church, of course, and the successor of Peter, our Holy Father, holds the keys. He has the power to bind and loose. So what the Church can do at different times is open up those treasures of mercy in different ways by encouraging certain practices. We're going to do that all the way down, not just in the whole worldwide church, but all the way down to the parish level, all the way down to the level of each diocese. So for instance, the way that the Holy Year is opened, the Jubilee year is opened, is that the Holy Father opens the holy door of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. Very dramatic, very symbolic gesture of opening the door for that mercy. The same thing will happen in every cathedral of the world. And then even down to the parish level, even just little things like we're going to ring our bell on first Fridays of the month at 3 o'clock, that hour of mercy, just those little tangible things that we can do. But it's for us to follow the Holy Father's lead and to look at what he's written. He wants us to do everything that we can in this year to refocus our attention, our spiritual attention on that mercy of God. One of the things he said is place back at the center the sacrament of reconciliation. So you've been away from that for a long time. That's something to pray about and think about this year. Performing those works of mercy. We're going to be looking at different ways to do that within this parish community. We do so many things already. Again, it's nothing new, but it's just a refocusing, sort of a re-holding up of what we already should be doing. All of these things will help us to receive the Lord's mercy. And again, to be careful of that sort of error that says, well, we aren't merciful enough already. Or that God's mercy is just sort of somehow blanketed upon us, whether we like it or not. What John the Baptist is saying in the gospel today, those familiar words, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight his paths. Mercy isn't free in the sense that we can actually do a lot to receive it ourselves. Mercy is free in the sense that God just gives it, but we sometimes have to work on our ability to receive that mercy. Sometimes we actually do have to bend down and untie the laces and take off our shoes to enter the Father's house, to enter the house of our guest. Sometimes we actually have to humble ourselves, make straight those paths in ourselves. John the Baptist, of course, preaching in the wilderness. It's an image for our sort of inside of ourselves. That wilderness that our hearts, our very being can be like a wilderness with all kinds of tangled affections and distractions, to straighten all of that out. Sometimes we do have to bend down and take off our shoes. Sometimes the Lord might say, no, keep your shoes on. It's not that big a deal. But for other things in our lives, and we all have them, the Lord's saying, would you be so kind as to take off your shoes and untangle those laces, untame that wilderness in your heart, and come into my house once again and receive my mercy. So we pray for the grace to do that in this year. It begins in just a matter of days, that we may be people of mercy. One of Pope Francis's little sayings that it's already begun to be heard around in his talks and his writings is to be agents of mercy, to be those people who bring mercy to others, who allow God's mercy an easy path into ourselves by straightening out those roads, by filling in those valleys and leveling out those hills, so that God's mercy may be in us and bear much fruit. And the greatest fruit of the Lord's mercy is the Eucharist we share every Sunday, where we actually take his mercy in our hands or upon our lips and consume it, and are filled with the Lord's mercy every single Sunday. So we pray that we would be those agents of mercy, to bring that mercy first to our own hearts and then to a world which cries out, even when it doesn't know it, Lord, have mercy.